apologies for this rather threatening looking typescript here. I'll try not to read it out too much. But some of you will have noticed one of the photos in the back. So a happy young woman, a baby in hot pink blanket. If you do look closely later, and a warning, this could trigger some people, the baby does look a little different. Midwives may have noticed this is sadly not a living baby, but was stillborn at 38 weeks. Baby Cara is held by her mother Mandy, who is delighted to see her and well prepared for the fact that Cara might in fact die before she was born. Mandy and her partner had received the very sad news months before that Cara had a life-limiting condition. So how to respond to the terrible news in pregnancy that your baby has a life-limiting condition? The expectation is very often that you will choose abortion, perhaps a late abortion of a very much wanted and loved baby. Aborting a wanted baby with anomalies can be, in the words of one study, a traumatic event which entails the risk of severe and complicated grieving. Another study found that after 14 months, nearly 17% of women were diagnosed with a mental health condition like post-traumatic stress, anxiety or depression, while a third study found that nearly 17% experienced significant psychological consequences after a year. So parents will often be unprepared for all this. Often parents will have had screening, for example, because it seemed expected or because they wanted to see their baby, or more likely a combination. And sadly they may receive a very negative picture of their child's condition, an overwhelmingly negative picture, with few positive words and no offer to connect them immediately with parent-led support groups. In the anguish which follows, they may be very vulnerable to any even perceived suggestion from others that in these situations abortion is the only feasible solution for babies like yours. In fact, the anguish of the initial diagnosis can instead resolve into a loving and peaceful acceptance of the baby if and when the pregnancy progresses. From accounts of parents who went through the pregnancy, it seems that awareness of the coming death and anticipatory grief during the lead-up weeks can help ensure that birth and death are a loving, peaceful and even joyful experience for the parents. This is hard to understand for those of us who have not had that experience, but it does seem to be the case for many. In the words of US neonatologist Dr. Elvira Paravicini, who offers perinatal hospice care, before death there was life, and the moment of birth for these families is a moment of joy. So, what is perinatal hospice? Apologies for those who know so already. As some of you will know, this is a model of care, an extra layer of support that can easily be incorporated into standard pregnancy and birth care. It begins, or should begin, not at birth, but at the time of diagnosis. To quote a dedicated website, it supports families through the rest of the pregnancy, through decision-making before and after birth, and through their grief. Perinatal hospice also enables families to make meaningful plans for the baby's life, birth and death, honouring the baby as well as the baby's family. It is an alternative to abortion, but is chosen by parents with varying views on abortion. And many parents do in fact choose this option when it is offered to them. Reactions of parents afterwards are overwhelmingly positive. Perinatal hospice is described on the same website, perinatalhospice.org, as a beautiful and practical response to one of the most heartbreaking challenges of prenatal testing. And elsewhere, to take up the themes of this workshop, one parent described it, when asked to choose a metaphor, as a beautiful, calming corridor between this world and the next. The concept of perinatal hospice care was first proposed in the medical literature in the late 90s, and there are now over 300 programs worldwide. As with adult palliative care, the aim of perinatal care is holistic, responding to all forms of suffering, physical, psychological, relational and spiritual of the baby or family. So pain and symptom control is addressed, but also there's focus on maximising experiences with the baby, so opportunities for cuddles, bathing and dressing in special clothes, meeting relatives and friends, religious ceremonies for those who want them. And there are many opportunities for taking photographs, foot and handprints and other mementos. If the pregnancy continues, the birth of the baby, even if he or she lives for only hours or minutes, is an event for the entire community. So family and friends are informed, many want to visit, send cards, gifts. Yes, there's usually some kind of Thanksgiving service, and that provides further social and community support. And basically the child's life touches a lot of people, so that can provide extra support once the baby has died. Perinatal hospice is not a place here in the literal sense, it's an approach to care. It's sometimes based in hospitals or clinics, and it's sometimes based in more conventional hospices. But of course, in terms of physical space, and referring to the topic of this workshop again, the space through which the journey takes place is in the first place that provided by the woman herself, the inner space of the womb. Some women going through this experience are in fact very proud of what their body is able to achieve in terms of supporting their very ill baby in a way no technology after birth can manage. Pregnancy is of course a natural bodily function. The woman is not a life support machine, but a mother offering basic care. After all, there's no form of nurture more basic than pregnancy, from which we all benefited at some period in our lives. You may be thinking that to take a pregnancy to term, knowing that the baby has a serious medical condition, requires one to be uniquely strong. However, women who have done this will sometimes protest that they are not saints or heroes, that they're just normal human beings. Women and their partners will sometimes say they find the strength to carry on, and we can think of other situations like parents of any child with very serious conditions. Somehow the parents do sort of bring out resources from themselves that they may not have even known they had. And as one mother has explained, the pregnant woman needs to grieve for the healthy child she expected, but at the same time needs to be allowed and supported to form a relationship with the actual living child inside her. Whether the woman continues her pregnancy or has an abortion, there will inevitably be grief for her and her partner in experiencing the death of this loved and wanted child. A study in France found that grief in both groups was similar, but it did find that those who terminated the pregnancy expressed more guilt. Another study comparing outcomes after continuing the pregnancy and after abortion in the case of anencephaly found, interestingly, that while continuing the pregnancy was not associated with improved psychological outcomes for male partners, it depends on which question you asked, so it was sort of divided. For women who continued reported significantly less despair, depression and avoidance than women who terminated. As perinatalhospice.org puts it, continuing the pregnancy allows you to parent your baby as long as possible and to protect your child for as long as he or she is able to live. Ultimately, it allows you to give your baby and yourself the full measure of your baby's life and the gift of a peaceful, natural goodbye. Continuing the pregnancy is not about passively waiting for death. It's about actively embracing the brief, shining moment of this little life. To return to Mandy, the woman in the photo, she was grief-stricken at the diagnosis, yet in her own words, while all of this was going on, and I was so filled with fear and sadness, my little girl was fluttering around inside my belly, reminding me that she's still here with me and needs me to be strong for her. I treasured every move and every kick. I lived for her little movements. They brought me such happiness. Mandy has this to say about the birth at 38 weeks. It's a long quote, so I'll end there, giving Mandy the last word on spaces of birth. within the hospital, but before that, within Mandy herself. Labour was tiring for our beautiful baby girl, and she was born sleeping. I will never forget that moment when I first saw her perfect little face and she was placed on my chest. The love I felt for her was indescribable. I thought my heart was going to burst with love and pride. It was all worth it. She was here, she was incredibly beautiful. She was born sleeping, but she was mine, ours. Our very own little miracle who against all the odds made it this far. Cara never experienced life outside of my womb. Her little life consisted of 38 weeks inside me, where she lived, grew and was loved, and to me that is truly amazing, a life of knowing only love. I'm so proud that my body was Cara's safe haven for those 38 weeks. It was her home. I was her home, and to me, and I'm so privileged to have carried her and to call her my baby girl. So that's it.